Now, occasionally, every pilot, no matter how good he or she is, gets lost. Don't worry, big guy. And some of us don't like to admit it, and some of us don't even know when we are, but we all occasionally get lost. Now, how do you know when you are lost? Well, here's a pretty good test. You're lost when you're looking at features outside the window of the airplane and then trying to find them on the chart. Because you're not lost and you know where you are when you look at your chart and just verify your position by finding the corresponding features outside the window. When it's the other way around, you're lost. So, you think you're lost. Now what do? Well, the first thing to do is don't panic. Look at this guy, nice and calm, under control. Just keep on going and hold that heading. The fact is, you may not really be lost at all. You could just be having trouble making the chart look like the real world outside the aircraft. Now, there could be seasonal changes. For instance, when there is snow on the ground. Everything looks different from when there is no snow on the ground. Airports are often hard to see when there's snow cover. And desert areas look different after heavy rains. You may see lakes that aren't even shown on a sectional. So check for big features on your chart. Look for things like lakes or rivers or dry beds or mountains or cities. Also, look at the general terrain elevations. You can look at these contour lines and see what the terrain elevations are. Up or down slopes, maybe the valleys, canyons, or even mountain ridges like this. These are all features that you should be able to see at a distance. Okay, so far you haven't figured out where you are. You knew where you were at the last checkpoint, so let's recheck your navigation from there. First, check your heading for reasonableness. Is it in the same general direction as the chart? Maybe it got transposed, or like me, you can't read your own writing. See, you should have been a doctor too. If, for example, you're going generally northeast on the chart, and your heading should be between 360 degrees and 090 degrees. Well, is it close to 045 degrees? And is the ETE you computed for this leg reasonable? Your airspeed in your Skyhawk is probably around 110 knots. So roughly measure the leg distance and divide it by 2. Your calculated ETE in minutes should be close to the number of miles for this leg divided by 2 and probably very slightly more. If, for example, the distance for this leg was 24 miles, then your ETE should be within a few minutes of 12 minutes. Let's think about it. 5 minutes or 25 minutes in this case would be unreasonable. Also, check your heading instruments. Make sure that you didn't leave your good luck horseshoe sitting by the magnetic compass. Or did you forget to check your heading indicator since you took off? Some heading indicators precess more rapidly than others. Make sure the wings are level when you check it against the compass. If your heading indicator is significantly off in one direction, you know to look out the other side for landmarks you expected on your planned course. Now, another thing that might help you if you're lost is to try and figure out what the wind might be doing to you. Maybe the wind has changed or you miscalculated the correction. Look outside and try to estimate your crab angle or your drift angle. Look down. Are the trees bending in one direction? Can you see smoke or dust drifting? If there is a body of water like a lake, maybe you can see ripples or wind streaks in it. Were you expecting a wind from the left and you're seeing one from the right? Well, if that's so, then once again you know you need to look out the aircraft on the right side for the landmarks that would have been on your intended course. If you recheck your planning and your heading instruments and you haven't found any problems, you want to make sure that you're looking in the right area. So you can use dead reckoning techniques to draw a circle of error on your chart. You should be inside this circle. You'll use the elapsed time since we were over your last checkpoint, your compass heading, and true airspeed to compute a no-wind estimated position. Plot that position and then draw a circle, the radius of which is based on the maximum wind drift for the same elapsed period of time. Your location is most likely within this circle, downwind of your desired course. For example, let's look at a situation like this. Your compass heading is 048 degrees. Your true airspeed is 100 knots. It's been 15 minutes since you were over your last checkpoint, and you assume a maximum 30-knot wind. So, you plot the center of the circle of error at 25 miles. That's 15 minutes at 100 knots along your compass heading from your last checkpoint. And then draw a circle of 7.5 miles in radius. That's how far a 30-knot wind could push you in 15 minutes, right around that point. So you would look for charted landmarks inside your circle and then look for matching actual landmarks outside. Since the size of the circle depends on how much time has passed after your last checkpoint, planning regular close checkpoints, not much more than 10 minutes apart, reduces the possibility of getting lost, and it also greatly eases the task of getting unlost again. Now let's assume you've done all that and nothing's worked yet. So what do you do now? Well, this is the time for what a lot of pilots call the 4 C's. That's climb, conserve, communicate, and comply. Not to be confused with the 3 C's, which is cussing, crying, and carrying on. So the first thing to do is climb. Climb as high as the clouds allow, but you don't want to climb above oxygen altitude. You want to climb as high as you can because it's easier to identify the big features from up there. When you are up there, look for your bracketing landmarks, where there are roads to the left or a railroad to the right maybe. And of course, higher altitudes increase the range of your radios, such as VOR. The next C is vitally important. Conserve your fuel, so you have more time to solve your problem. We call this flying at maximum endurance. You can achieve maximum endurance by reducing your power to the lowest possible setting that maintains your altitude. You'll find this minimum power setting is at about 65 knots. Of course, you'll also want to adjust your mixture to the recommended lean setting to get the most benefit. By reducing power to the minimum setting, you add valuable minutes to your time airborne, and it also provides you more range than at normal cruise if you should need it. If you've done all of this and you're still lost, maybe it is time for some cussing and crying. No, I'm just kidding. It's time to communicate. Call for help on the radio. The people on the ground have the facilities like radar and direction-finding equipment to quickly help you locate your position. So call for help and make sure you do this before you get low on fuel and your situation turns into an emergency. Which brings us to the last C, which is comply. When you get help on the radio, do what they say. The people you talk to are trained to help. They'll do everything they can to get you safely to a suitable airport. But what if nothing has worked and you can't reach anyone? Well, now it's time to change course. Head toward a group of prominent landmarks that should be easily identifiable on the chart. For instance, Mount Laguna right here, or find a town if you see one. Fly as low as you can legally over the town and look for a name that you might find on your chart that corresponds to it. Okay, you found a great landmark and all your troubles are over, right? Not so fast. Things can seem to match the chart, especially when you really want them to. This is the time to doubt that you actually have found your location. There should be at least 2 or 3 features that prove that this is the spot you're looking at. For instance, if you're looking for Oceanside Airport, you see the intersection of 2 highways here, the merger of 2 highways there, and an amphitheater right next to the field. If you see those, it's Oceanside. You can be pretty sure of it. And make sure you do this, because otherwise you're going to go through this routine all over again. If you're still lost and you find an airport, you're not going to be lost very long. Land and sort out your confusion in a relaxed atmosphere without pressure. Now, on the other hand, if you haven't found an airport and you're getting low on fuel or daylight, make a precautionary landing on the best surface you can find before you run out of either. And now you know some very good techniques to use when suddenly the ground doesn't paint the same picture you were expecting from your chart. And someday, during a hangar flying session, you'll have stories to tell about a friend of yours who once got lost.